I just wanted to say welcome and thanks for your interest in the Westpac Social Change Fellowship. So I'm Alyssa, the Program Lead for the Fellowship, and I acknowledge that I'm hosting this webinar from the lands of the Kaurna people, the traditional owners and custodians of the Adelaide Plains, and pay my respects to elders both past, present and emerging. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you are all joining today, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar. So to start with, I'd like to introduce two of my colleagues who are joining today. Firstly, Lauren Hill.
Hi, lovely to have you all online, and thanks for joining us to hear more about this awesome fellowship.
Thanks, Lauren. And also Ali Starling.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
Great. And we're also very fortunate to have Lyndon joining us. Lyndon was a 2019 Social Change Fellow and the founder of EATUP.
Hi, everyone. Excited to speak to you.
Wonderful. I'll just go to the next slide. Now, firstly, apologies in advance. I do have a slight cold at the moment, so hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So in this webinar, we'll cover a bit of background about the Westpac Scholars Trust and the Social Change Fellowship. Then Lyndon will share his experience of his fellowships and some great tips for the application. And then we'll wrap with some further questions and about the selection timeline and further tips for your application as well. So please write any questions you have in the Q&A box. So to start with, I thought it might be worthwhile giving a bit of context about the Westpac Scholars Trust. In 2017, Westpac celebrated its 200th anniversary and created a $100 million scholarship fund. The intent of the fund is to support the next generation of brilliant Australians to challenge, explore, and set new benchmarks in innovation, research, and social change. The Trust awards 100 scholarships each year, and since launching, we've awarded over 560 scholarships to the value of over $31 million. And we've centred our scholarships around three key focus areas that we believe are at the heart of Australia's future growth and prosperity. These are technology and innovation, Australia-Asia ties, and positive social change. So we have 5 scholarship streams, which are on the screen now. 4 of our programs are run in collaboration with our university partners, and this includes the Research Fellowship, which supports early career researchers to undertake groundbreaking research here in Australia. The Future Leaders Scholarship, which supports exceptional individuals to undertake postgraduate study, either a master's or PhD at one of Australia's leading universities. And the Young Tech and Asian Exchange Scholarships, which support undergraduate students. And across all of our scholarships, we have a focus on leadership development. But of course, the program we're focusing on today is the Social Change Fellowship, which is open for applications until the 30th of September. So the Social Change Fellowship is unique in that it backs individuals who have the drive and innovative ideas to lead social change in Australia. And each year we award 10 fellowships valued up to $50,000 each. And we are now entering our 7th year of the fellowship, and it's open to individuals from any sector. So the fellowship is designed to give recipients the time and space to develop their skills, knowledge, and networks to lead social change. So a key element to remember is that this is an investment in you, not your organisation. And it's not a prize, but investment in your development and learning as a leader. And we work with fellows on a unique development plan that may involve activities like engaging with thought leaders and industry experts across Australia or internationally, completing short courses, attending conferences, or conducting stakeholder engagement, or receiving mentoring or coaching to enhance your ability to lead social change. Also, all the 2022 fellows will go through a leadership program together, and we'll provide a bit of an overview of this at the end of the session as well. So if you started an application, you would have noticed that you have to complete a short eligibility survey first. The main eligibility criteria is that you're over the age of 18 and an Australian citizen or permanent resident, that you're able to complete the fellowship in 2022 and are seeking funding for your personal development and learning, and that you're leading an existing social change initiative. Your initiative must be launched and tackling a social issue of importance to Australia. So, what does a successful applicant look like? We're looking for individuals who really demonstrate commitment and leadership to driving social change in Australia. Those who are engaged and supported by the community they are seeking to impact, who are open to new ideas and diverse perspectives. And we also want to see that you've really researched the fellowship opportunity and have well-considered development goals, and that you can highlight why the fellowship would be a turning point for you and why now is the best time in your development. So who are we looking for? We are looking for individuals who thrive on collaboration and learning, who are connected communicators and have experience leading social change, and individuals with a strong generosity of spirit and a genuine desire to give back to Australia. I really encourage you to read our funding guidelines on our website, as it goes into all of these attributes in further detail, as we'll be looking for evidence for these qualities throughout the selection process. So also encourage you to jump on our website and have a look at our previous fellows and our news section of our website. So here you'll get to learn more about people like Joel Pilgrim, who's the founder of Waves of Wellness. Joel used his fellowship to engage with over 15 surf therapy programs internationally to explore best practice and collaboration, and invested in his leadership development through the Stanford Executive Program for Not-for-Profit Leaders. And also Makara Ramsing, who through her fellowship attended Harvard programs on design thinking, worked with LGBTIQ communities across the world, and hosted a human rights conference in Hong Kong. And we're also looking for people like Lyndon, who's the incredible founder of Eat Up, whose mission is to ensure no Aussie kids goes hungry at school. Lyndon completed his fellowship in 2019 and travelled to the US to learn about the school lunch system and meet with innovative leaders in social change and business. He also completed the Williamson Community Leadership Program in Victoria as well. So Lyndon really embodies who a Westpac scholar is. Someone with an immense generosity of spirit and desire to give back to Australia. And he is an exceptional leader and one who embraces diversity, learning and collaboration. So I'll pass on to you, Lyndon, to share some of your insights from your fellowship. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alyssa. I'm so excited for the opportunity to speak today and share with you all, and still so grateful to be a Westpac Social Change Fellow. To extend a little bit just to start with on Eat Up, we started from the most grassroots of beginnings, nothing complex or grand. It all began actually in 2013 in Shepparton in country Victoria, my hometown. And I read a local newspaper story about hungry kids in Shepparton who were being sent to school without lunch. And I was totally taken aback to read that news and desperately wanted to do something to try and help. And at that stage, I was living with my mum and dad and had the simple idea that if these kids didn't have a lunch, what if I made them one myself? And I pinched what I could from mum's cupboards, and with her help and some mates, we made 100 sandwiches for each of these two schools. And it was only really when I dropped the lunches off to the schools and had the chance to speak to the teachers that I got an insight, I suppose, to the circumstances facing the kids and how it was impacting, and also the lengths the teachers were going to try and help. So the teachers explained the need in really clear, simple terms, as teachers have the great knack of doing. They said, when kids are hungry, it makes it very difficult for them to concentrate. And when kids can't concentrate, it makes it nearly impossible to learn. So it made that driving goal of making sure kids who were otherwise missing out, had a full stomach, could focus on their class, their work in the classroom and maximising their education was the really clear goal. From that beginning, we've been able to scale Eat Up with the help of amazing volunteers who help us make sandwiches, generous food donors like Wonder White who donate the bread we use in all of our lunches, to now supporting around Australia. At the time that I applied for the Westpac Social Change Fellowship, Eat Up was just focusing in Victoria. So it was a key moment for us in terms of growing, and the fellowship as at any moment, presented such an amazing opportunity to learn and grow. And I remember one of the key aspects of applying is sharing why it's a really key moment or critical moment for you as an individual or a leader in terms of having this incredible opportunity to get new skills. And I remember sharing in terms of EAT-Up, the opportunity to learn about how to scale an organization from something that's impacting on a localized or state level to something with the aspiration that can support nationally. So being able to really crystallize your goal in terms of why is this a key moment for you as an individual and by extension your organization. Like Alyssa said, it's an amazing opportunity that focuses on your own leadership, but relating that moment to something that you're focusing on within your current work, I found really key. The other advice, among other things, I would give you as well, and certainly let me know questions. I'm happy to ask as many as you've got as we go to make it as beneficial to all as possible. But is to think really big in terms of your development plan. You'll start to craft that together. You've heard some amazing examples from Alyssa already about some of the international travel, which we hope will return, of course, for you all perhaps as part of this as well, and meeting with truly global leaders in your own space and through programs at Harvard, and I know other fellows have done them at Stanford as well. Incredible opportunities. So I would encourage you to think really big with what you go for. Don't sort of limit yourself in terms of thinking, well, that might be really tough. Let's just aim a little bit lower than that. Put it in there, and if you're fortunate enough to progress, the amazing team within Westpac Scholars will help you craft that in a spot that's going to fit. The other sort of broader advice I would give as well is give yourself a really generous window with your application in terms of filling it out and applying. Try and look at the criteria in the application as closely as you can and always meet that. I know a little bit like a university assignment there, you want to make sure you're specifically addressing the questions and the points with your own background experience and your own aspirations for the fellowship. Something I remember I did that I found really helpful in my application as well was I shared my application just with, you've probably got a few trusted friends, family, or maybe your organisation's at a stage where you've got some support around grant writing or funding, but to share what you've written or your before submitting with those around you to get their thoughts and just sort of cast another set of eyes or more over it to get their feedback on how it presents, I think is really helpful. Alyssa and the team couldn't be more supportive in terms of their assistance of you. So if you do have any questions as you go through the process, certainly reach out and have a chat to them. They're incredible. And I know if you're fortunate enough to progress, they're going to be such amazing supporters as the opportunity advances with you all. And perhaps just to give you some insight to my fellowship year and the amazing people involved in my particular year and beyond, that's one of the many incredible opportunities that you'll find in being a scholar is accessing this amazing network of people who are inspirational, have done amazing things. To be able to engage and learn from them of these different sort of fields of social change is such an enormous gift. And I would even encourage you now, like to reach out to some of the fellows. I know everyone is so grateful to be a Westpac scholar. And if you've got questions about their own fellowship or where they might be able to provide advice, certainly reach out. I know I've had some people reach out in the past with a few questions. And similarly, if you want to connect with me after this to have more of a chat, I would be happy to. Certainly the least I can do to support. So in terms of my year, I was so lucky with how I structured that. So Alyssa touched on the Williamson Community Leadership Program. In Victoria, that was an opportunity for me to learn and connect with leaders from not just the social change field, but from a really broad scope, whether it's government, corporate, education backgrounds, medical. And I found that really beneficial in terms of getting this huge range of perspectives and career insights. That was so helpful. So I would encourage you to look at, of course, it's probably naturally going to be very socially change focused, but to look broader than that, I found really beneficial. I had the opportunity to engage and connect with the Westpac scholars around Australia as well. So to spend those opportunities where it might not be a structured learning or course, but you're going to meet with and shadow someone who you really look up to, and just sort of be a bit of fly on the wall about how they go about their day-to-day work, their day-to-day life, their organisation. I found that so helpful in terms of seeing what best practice looks like from these people you look up to and learn from. And then in terms of the international travel, I was really fortunate to spend some time in the US learning from the lunch system there. Of course, in the US, they get their lunches at school provided through the education system, and seeing the scale, the logistics involved in that was absolutely incredible. I was also very fortunate to meet with leaders in the sporting and social change field as well. I've got aspirations beyond Eat Up, and this is perhaps where the individual support of the program comes into play, where inherently, I suppose, by you learning and benefiting from the fellowship, it's definitely going to help your organisations, and that's amazing. That's, of course, what we all want to do within our work. But if you've got broader aspirations or interests beyond that, and for me, the intersection of sport and social change was certainly one. And I had the incredible opportunity to meet with individuals involved in the US, Mexico, Canada World Cup bid coming up for soccer in the future, from the MLS, the Major League Soccer, with the UFC. We were fortunate to work with them with Eat Up. I also went to Nike World Headquarters in Portland, which was amazing, and the opportunity to learn from some of their great storytellers between their brand campaigns, how they resonate so powerfully, and for me, trying to leverage the influence of sport and athletes to bring about social change and engagement was something that was really phenomenal. And I found, like, I didn't have any contacts at Nike or the World Cup bid or the World Surfing League I also met with. I would sort of connect through LinkedIn on what I thought were these absolute long shots. And funnily enough, a lot of them came through. Certainly I tried others that didn't, but in terms of your fellowship, again, that sort of theme of thinking big, you never know who's going to say yes. And in fact, I actually found it was probably more of those bigger organisations I had success with than some of the smaller not-for-profit organisations in terms of getting the available time. And we can probably relate to that as individuals where you're so busy and there's not as many resources, I suppose, in smaller organisations like Eat Up or ours, and sometimes emails or LinkedIn messages can sort of just go through. But I was lucky to have success with some of those bigger organisations, which was absolutely amazing to be able to learn from them. So it truly is, like, I know it might sound like a tokenistic thing to say, but it's been truly life-changing. The nature of the learning, the nature of the engagement, it really has motivated me, and it feels like a huge boost of endorsement in terms of the nature of the work in the organisation and the belief that sort of comes with the program like this, and the benefit to be able to take part in it. And the benefits still, like Westpac and Alyssa and Lauren have been so helpful going forward from that moment. So in many ways, it's the 12-month fellowship, but it doesn't feel like it's ended for me. It's such an enduring relationship with Alyssa and Lauren and the fellow scholars. So one that I'm so grateful for, and to answer questions coming up from all of you when the time comes, please share. I want to tailor my insights as can be as helpful for you as possible. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Lyndon. That was really great. So we might, open up for a few questions for Lyndon, and then I will answer the more generic fellowship questions at the end. So Lauren, over to you, what we have.
Thanks, Lyndon. Always so inspired to hear your story. So we've had a couple of questions come through for you. The first one is, what stage was Eat Up at prior to receiving the fellowship?
It was a lot smaller than it is now. So at that stage, we were supporting on a state Victorian specific basis. We may have just started to support some schools in New South Wales. Now Eat Up supports across Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, WA and Northern Territory. So we were sort of state specific, and around applying it was about that view to be able to stretch nationally. So a lot smaller. I was trepidatious or uncertain whether I should apply, I would encourage you, absolutely go for it. Like, don't think, is it too small? Is it not quite there? Go for it.
Cool, thanks so much. Another question was, what sort of evidence did you provide for your application showing the need?
The need in terms of my learning, or the need in terms of the organisation?
I think probably both. How did you establish the need for solving that social issue around food insecurity for children? So how did you evidence that in your application?
I guess it's leveraging a lot of the broader sort of government food bank data to show the need and the issue and the concern. And I suppose around the nature of developing as an individual, it was around being able to engage one-on-one in a state-specific way in Victoria, but inherently leading in a different way when you're doing it from a national perspective, where you're not going to be able to engage personally with all of your staff day to day. So being able to develop the systems, the processes, the team to be able to manage at that level. That was how I tried to define that piece.
Perfect, thank you. So somebody else has asked, can you describe a bit more about how the scholarship has assisted in building your networks?
Oh, for sure. Well, firstly, you're going to have 10 amazing sort of fellows, or 9 others if you progress in your particular year. Now there's so many scholars across each of the streams. So social change is just one. So there's an immediately valuable network. So to be able to leverage their contacts, Westpac has also been so helpful in terms of, if you were to just say a broader industry or field you want to learn from, they'll allow you to help leverage their incredible networks as well. And then in terms of LinkedIn, a lot of those long shots, I really didn't have any contact with. I just sort of I put together probably a 50 or 100 word intro, just saying, hi, Lyndon from Meetup. I've been really fortunate to get this opportunity. And I sort of put it in terms where it was about bringing the learning back to your organisation and to Australia, which I think people thought, oh, wow, that's quite cool. And sharing with your cohort through your fellowship plan as well. And that was pretty successful. I'd be happy to share. I'm sure I can fish through some old LinkedIn messages to see what I wrote.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. A couple of questions around organising those meetings and things overseas. So did you have any of those organised before you got the grant, or only after you'd received the fellowship?
The meetings were after I'd received the fellowship. In terms of the development plan, knowing where I wanted to go and the areas I wanted to learn, that's what I shared at that piece. And then in terms of the specifics of meeting with the individuals, if you've got a personal network, I suppose you can do some of those in advance. But I had a list of who I would really love to meet with, and that's what I shared within the fellowship plan, and then went about trying to get as many of those as possible.
Perfect. And I think that covers off one of the other questions we had is, do you need to have these meetings and things set up in your development plan, or does Westpac Scholars help to find the best opportunities if you were to receive a fellowship? And I think what you're saying there is it's good to do the detailed development plan for yourself of what you're wanting to use the fellowship money for, and Westpac can support where there's a gap in that. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't feel too much pressure to have the specifics in terms of individuals you're meeting with, but if you know perhaps the particular courses, the locations, the areas of interest, and perhaps some examples of who those people might be, I think that's probably going to be necessary at that stage before you get to very specific.
Perfect. Somebody else has asked, what was your average monthly time commitment within the fellowship?
It sort of ebbed and flowed in terms of how you structured the year, but one piece of advice I would give is, I think I probably over-crammed that year a little bit. And I remember just the advice in terms of less is more at times. So it's sort of tempting to try and you get the chance to travel and fit in as many meetings as possible. But to give yourself the space around those key meetings and key development opportunities, I find will really allow you to help, I guess, the lessons embed and give you that time to reflect, which I think is really, really important. The other aspect that plays into that is if you are able to take some time away from your organisation at these moments. So I can imagine you're all incredibly busy, but to create the space in that regard as well is going to really help you make the most of it. So in terms of a monthly average, the Williamson program went throughout the course of the year. So there were probably, if I could say on a day point of view, it was maybe 3 to 5 days per month. but there were some months where I would do, say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks was the US trip, and then other months where there might not be particular events that month.
Okay, great, thank you. There's a couple of questions around the money and monetizing ETUP. So what were the ways in which the scholarship assisted in monetizing ETUP to make it sustainable?
So just to clarify, the money itself none of it went sort of to ETUP, but I guess by extension, the lessons learned from that were around how best do we sort of create really sustainable fundraising in terms of building brand partners and from a leadership point of view, how do we engage that the same level of standard in each state and protocols are followed to a really high level. So I guess it was by extension, the lessons from the fellowship came into play in terms of ETUP sustainability and even in terms of Westpac's amazing support, like getting your guidance, Lauren, who's ETUP's supporter ambassador within Westpac, which we're so lucky to have, like to be able to leverage a lot of the amazing expertise and acumen within Westpac to be able to give you those insights and support. Like that's another direct extension. It's bigger, believe it or not, than just that amazing $50,000, the support you'll get.
Brilliant, thanks. I think that pretty much covers off quite a few of the funding questions we've received. We also received lots of thanks and for sharing your inspirational story. I'll end with one last question for you is, what is the one piece of advice you'd give yourself at the beginning of your own fellowship that you might do differently?
It probably is that less is more piece, honestly. Like with the busyness of ETUP that year and everything happening, and I absolutely loved everything I fit in. But I think like to be able to travel to a location or do a course, to give the space around them, and rather than maybe going somewhere and meeting with 10 people, try and pick, well, who's 3 I could maybe spend a little bit more time with, or take the space around that. That would be my sort of key piece, I would say.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Lyndon. It's always so great to hear from somebody who's had the experience of being a Westpac Social Change Fellow. So back over to you, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to you both. So now we're going to dive into a bit more about the selection timeframe and some further application tips as well. Keep adding your questions to the Q&A and we'll address it at the end of the webinar too. So applications are closing at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 30th of September, but we strongly encourage you not to leave your application to the last minute. From here, all the applications are reviewed by at least 2 assessors, and then we shortlist the top 50 applicants around Australia to proceed to the regional selection panels. So all applicants will be notified late October of the outcome and if they progress to the next stage. Also, ensure you mark our emails as safe, as we often find we do end up in spam, and we don't want you to miss some of the important updates. For those that do progress to the regional panel stage, you'll be invited to complete a video interview, which you can record in your own time over a 4-day period. So from here, the regional panels will meet in November and are comprised of business, not-for-profit and Westpac leaders across Australia, and they'll help to select the 16 national finalists. For those that reach the national panel, we'll connect you with a previous fellow to coach you in the lead-up, and the national panel will be held in Sydney on the 24th of February. So we're working towards an in-person interviews in Sydney like previous years, and we'll cover any domestic travel costs. But if it's not safe to travel at that time, we'll do interviews online. So the 2022 Social Change Fellows will be notified early March. From there, we'll work with you on your bespoke development plans. And at the moment, the group leadership program will be in May next year. So some further application and development plan tips. We really encourage you to read the funding guidelines on our website. We'll also circulate a link to that with a recording of this webinar. And also in your application, remember to save as you go and don't use refer to the above, as some questions can be reviewed in isolation. Also try not to use language that is really specialist or unique to, I guess, your field. And yeah, try not to use acronyms as well if possible. So in your application, we also ask you to submit 2 references. We only contact references for those who reach the national panel stage, and we'll let you know before we do that. But please ensure that they know you well and your initiative well too, as they become, I guess, great ambassadors for you in the selection process. Also remember to really inspire us with your vision and how you'll contribute to the future of Australia. Remember, we'll be reading hundreds of applications, so take the time to share with us your story and bring your application to life. So we will share the slides for this, so I know there's a bit of detail on this page, but we've asked you to provide a proposed fellowship experience table, which we asked for in the application. So as Lyndon said, we really encourage you to spend the time thinking through your development goals and map out the key activities that align to this. So ensure you demonstrate how it benefits your initiative, the community, and the impact you want to create as a leader more broadly. So the purpose of this section is to really think through the logic around your proposed fellowship experience, and for us to assess your readiness for the learning opportunity and how it would be a game changer for you. So if you've applied in previous years, you might have seen that we've asked for a full, I guess, fellowship plan and budget, but this isn't required anymore. So we'll work with the 16 finalists to reach the national panel on this element, as we understand there's a lot of change happening in the world at the moment, and your plan will evolve a lot throughout the selection process. So put together your ideal fellowship experience at the moment. We do want to see thought and depth to it, so do try and be specific with programs or organisations or individuals that you'd like to connect with, and keep asking yourself, what is the change I'm seeking to make as a leader for social change, and how can this fellowship help me achieve this? And remember that this is an investment as you as a leader, not in what your organisation currently needs. So there may be areas around marketing or finance or risk or governance that your organisation needs, but I guess try and separate what expertise you can bring in your organisation versus what you need to empower you as a leader for the future. So as I mentioned, all the 10 social change fellows go through a group leadership program together, which should be held in May next year. We're fortunate to bring this year's cohort together for a week in Adelaide this year. So we thought we'd just provide a little bit of high level background about what's included in that program. So $10,000 of the maximum $50,000 budget is attributed to the group leadership program, and it covers areas like building self-awareness around your strengths and development areas through a Korn Ferry 360 leadership survey, learning around embracing leadership as a collective approach and leading complex change, also around exploring social innovation and systems change. We have quite a bit of focus around sustaining yourself as a leader and fostering your well-being and resilience. Then there's elements on presence and impact and storytelling. And then there's also a portion at the end of your fellowship where we group coach you to unpack your fellowship learnings and help put your new learnings and networks into action as well. So we'll just sort of end on some tips from previous fellows, which I think are really beneficial. The first tip comes to really take time to critically reflect on your personal development needs and show how the fellowship would be a turning point for you. And I think really be honest with yourself. What is blocking you on your leadership journey? And what are your strengths and weaknesses? And how would you use your fellowship to build on them? Also thoroughly research the fellowship opportunity, and reach out to us at Westpac Scholars, or you might want to connect with a previous fellow to hear more about how they use the fellowship. As Lyndon touched on, seek advice from others who work closely with you, and I guess be open-minded to this feedback. You might be surprised about some of the wonderful opportunities or suggestions or networks that might arise from this. We also really encourage you to, I guess, show the real you, who you are and what drives you, but also what challenges you're facing, as we really want, I guess, this fellowship to be a game changer for you and be a really great learning opportunity for you as a leader. And fellows really are selected because of how they think and what they believe is possible as well. Also, challenge the notion that success equals success, that scale equals success, and get off the beaten track. So this is a top tip from two fellows, Nick Macy and Julian O'Shea. So they really talk about how in our culture, scale has become synonymous with success, but you don't always need to go into a program at Harvard or meet with leaders at Google. And often the most wise and skilled and insightful people are those working on localised initiatives. Also be clear and concise in your application. Social change fellows are good communicators, and we are looking for that in the application process. And give the fellowship application the time it deserves. So it's not like your usual grant application, it is an investment in you, and it does take some reflection time to put the application together. And finally, if you don't succeed in the first time applying, do try again in the future. We often encourage people to leave a year or two between applying, because it really is about timing, and when it's the best time for you as a leader, the best time for your organisation as well. So many of our greatest fellows didn't get the fellowship the first time, but submitted again. And in hindsight, they always say that the timing wasn't right when they first applied. So I guess that comes to the more formal elements of the webinar. We're more than happy to take any additional questions you have about the fellowship with the time we have left. For any questions we don't get to, we'll I guess fill these out and return it with a recording of the session as well. And for any really, I guess, individual based questions, please feel free to email us at Westpac Scholars, and we can yeah, chat to you about them as well. So yeah, Lauren, happy to take any questions.
Thanks so much, Alyssa. So many great questions have come through. I think you've covered off some of them, but let's just address them to make sure that everyone has their questions answered. And as you said, what we don't get to, we'll cover off in the follow-up email.
Great.
So firstly, a couple of eligibility questions. Is there an age limit with this or the other fellowship? For the fellowship, is there an age limit?
No, of course not. No, you just have to be over the age of 18 to apply for the fellowship.
Similarly to that question is, have there been any working mothers come through and receive fellowships, and can some of the funding be used to overcome some of the financial challenges with working mums and childcare?
Yes, yes, we've had many working mothers and fathers do the fellowship. Some have taken their partners on the fellowship trips with them. I guess that has to be covered separately, but with also if there's, I guess, additional childcare that you might need to support you in doing your fellowship activities, that can be covered within the fellowship budget. So we'd work with the applicant once they're successful on that, but there is that additional support to have around you when navigating that. And Lyndon, feel free to jump in with any tips too.
Do you have a quota for each state or territory?
We don't have a quota, but we do look at a diversity lens across Australia, but that I guess is more than I guess just looking at where the applicants are based, but we do want I guess a good spread across Australia with our applicants, but often that can be determined by how many applications we receive from a state. It does sort of ebb and flow each year, but yeah, it's not a strict quota, no.
Okay, perfect. A couple of questions around this concept around launching your idea. So can you still apply if you're still launching your social idea, or does it need to be launched already? Like if it's still growing, or you know, and where's the best time and place for?
Yeah, I think generally we say it does definitely need to be launched. It can't be in idea or research stage. And that's more because we really want you to be able to identify what is, I guess, the barriers and opportunities for you as a leader. And we find if it's too early on, you're a bit unable to sort of make full use of the fellowship opportunities. So we try and encourage you to give a few years into your initiative launching and then apply for the fellowship. Lyndon, I don't know if you want to jump in about, I guess, timing of the fellowship as a leader and for your initiative launching. Also, another thing to add is having, I guess, the support structures behind you to undertake the fellowship. It is a big undertaking. It does take time away from your organisation. So, yeah, I guess if you're very new in infancy, you might not have those, I guess, formal support systems to keep the organisation going while you might be travelling or undertaking courses. But
yeah, it's a great point, Alyssa. I think in terms of an organisation where you've got a certain level of foundation and proven evidence, I suppose, that the idea is working and going well. And like Alyssa said, really key if possible to be able to have some support within the organisation. So if you do spend some time away completing the fellowship, the organisation is able to endure in that stretch. But I'd also encourage those on the call or those applying, there's the opportunity to apply in future years. So it's always worth, I think, giving it a shot, unless maybe you're very, very much at that infancy. And then perhaps if you don't progress, you and your organisation might be even sort of further progressed in sort of next year's perhaps. So there's always that scope. If you think, you know what, I'd love to do this, but I'm not quite there yet, maybe give it a year or so, or if you're unsure, give it a shot and know that you can apply again in future too. And I know there've been successful fellows who have applied on multiple occasions before getting it as well. So it sort of shows how you can do that.
Yeah, I think it's drawing to that point that it's a point in time in your development, and remembering that it's not a prize but a learning opportunity. And often when people aren't quite ready in that development plan section, we can sort of see that it just needs a bit more depth and thought to how they're going to use the fellowship opportunity.
Alyssa, you might want to answer this question then, just on that. It says, is feedback provided if an application does not make it through in the round?
Yeah, I guess so. For all the applicants who don't make it to the regional panel, we send top level feedback around, I guess, the key gaps that are common in those applications that don't progress. For all those who reach the regional panel, you do get, I guess, one-on-one feedback. And then, of course, from the national panel as well. If you have applied in multiple years and haven't been successful, please do reach out to us and we can provide, I guess, top level feedback on your application as well.
Thank you. There's been quite a lot of questions around being the founder or having started the initiative or just contributing to the initiative. Can you give some clarity around the eligibility for people who perhaps might not be founders of their organisations?
Yeah, of course. And so you don't need to be the founder. I guess many fellows are, but it's certainly not an eligibility requirement. I guess the more thing is that you're leading a program or a key aspect of the organisation or initiative, because it's about showing demonstrated leadership for social change. So yeah, for example, Jethro in WA, who was leading, I guess, the innovation program at Anglicare WA at the time. So he wasn't the CEO of the organisation or the founder, but he could really demonstrate the work he was leading and the impact it was having and the gaps in his development for the fellowship as well. So Lyndon, I know, yeah, a couple in your year weren't necessarily founders. Do you have anything to add on that? Because great leaders come in many facets of the organisation. So yeah, don't feel like...
Absolutely. I know there were others in future year too. So it's not uncommon to be working within a bigger, broader organisation. In fact, if you look at probably the cohort from each year, there's examples of that. And like Alyssa said, like being able to work within a bigger organisation where you get that sort of level of insight, support, scale, and it's probably just a further sign that it truly is an investment in you as an individual, rather than necessarily that specific individual, and seeing that potential in yourself to be able to lead is sort of what the fellowship's about. So definitely don't be limited by that. I think it's like working high up in those organisations is massive. So definitely jump into.
And I guess one eligibility that I didn't talk to, but it was on the slide, is if your organisation is quite small with under 50 employees, we do encourage only one person to apply in each fellowship year. So have the chat to people if you think you are multiple people going to apply. And that's more because for a smaller organisation, having the two key leaders, I guess, out of the organisation for an extended period of time can put undue strain on the organisation, and we don't want that. But I guess, yeah, fellows have been successful from the same organisation in future years, and that's what we do encourage.
Great, thank you. Lyndon, probably a question for you. How easy was fitting in your travel and stepping away from the business for you?
I would say it was actually probably more tricky from a personal perspective. I think like as a founder or someone starting something, you get a bit trepidatious of like, is everything going to be okay? When I actually did that, the team showed themselves like fully capable, did tremendous work. It barely sort of noticed that I was gone, in fact. So I think that's often the harder challenge is you individually saying, okay, I'm going to step away. I'm not going to check the specific emails or calls or maybe just at specific times, that you find it is probably the trickier part. But yeah, I would definitely encourage to do that. And from that advice, that's something I definitely could have done better in my fellowship and would have made it even stronger.
Great, thanks. There's been quite a few questions that have come through on that point around travel, given COVID restrictions and things. Do we have any advice on how to set our proposals, knowing that there could be limitations around international travel, or just to go with best case development plans?
Yeah, that's the key reason why we didn't ask for any sort of budget or a complete list of fellowship activities. So what that table really hopes to show is your thinking and how it really aligns to your development goals. For the moment, do best case. We will work with you throughout the application process and ensuring it's safe to travel. But also there is such great, I guess, leaders and learnings to have in Australia too. So don't sort of think that you need to go internationally either. There is a lot to be done in Australia, and many previous fellows have done some great online programs like Alt MBA and some of the recent Harvard and Stanford courses online too. But yeah, think big at the moment. You are in application process, and yeah, early next year we'll sort of help craft the final plan.
Great, thanks. So a question came through on timing. Do we have to complete the fellowship in a calendar year or a financial year, or what are the time restrictions around it?
Yeah, so it's 12 months from award of the fellowship. So next year's fellows will need to complete by March 2023, as you'll be awarded the fellowship or notified in early March. So it's 12 months from receipt of the fellowship.
Great, thank you. What are the top 3 reasons people don't get chosen?
I think the first key reason is in that first section that asks you about you as a leader for social change. Often people talk very broadly about their organisation and don't really demonstrate what was their role in leading something. Because yeah, we're really trying to look at that attribute in you. So yeah, try not to be too modest and really try and demonstrate what was your role in leading social change. The other one is probably not giving time to your development goals, so that then the development plan approach just doesn't make sense. It isn't able to show why it's going to be a game changer for you, would be the second one. And probably the third is readiness. So that you're maybe not quite as ready as a leader, or your organisation might not be able to sort of be ready for you to step away or have demonstrated impact just yet.
Okay, great, thank you. So there's been a number of questions that have come through on whether your organisation needs to be a not-for-profit. I know you touched on Jethro being, you know, he was working at Anglicare. So could you just clarify again around sole traders versus businesses versus not-for-profits and those roles?
Yes, so it's open to people from any sector, so you do not have to be from a not-for-profit. The funding does go to you as an individual. So you could be within government, you could be a teacher, I guess leading a social change fellow program in a school. Many are from not-for-profits, but it's not an eligibility requirement. It's just you have to be leading a program of social change of relevance to Australia, so not internationally. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. So a couple of questions again on people can see that courses that they put in their development plans can be no longer than 4 weeks. What is the reason for that?
It's mainly because it's an experiential learning opportunity, so it's not meant to be a drawn out fellowship. So on a case-by-case basis, it might be approved for slightly longer, but yeah, it's meant to not be a full in-depth accreditation course, and it's meant to be a mixture of different learning opportunities, whether at stakeholder engagement, conferences, coaching, mentoring. We find those longer courses just take up too much of the budget, and yeah, it's meant to be more experiential in its approach.
Great, thank you. So one of the questions is around what is the 50K allowed to be spent on? And maybe Lyndon, you can share some of the way that you spent your funds to help clarify that.
Yeah, it's that combination, and I know in terms of the development plan, having that mix between sort of theory-based coursework, which for me was, I guess you could see with the Williamson program, and then others more experiential in terms of shadowing different individuals, and others more exploratory, perhaps in terms of elements of some of the travel and meeting with individuals you can learn from. So I think having elements of each of those things, if you're too heavy on any one area, you'll likely get encouraged to make sure that's there's that mix involved in each of them. But there is scope within the fellowship funds, knowing that you're going to travel and knowing there's expenses involved in whether it's accommodation or daily expenses. Elements of that are covered, which of course is an enormous boost within the fellowship as well. So it's amazing the breadth of assistance that allows you to fully maximise the year.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Lyndon. So Alyssa, just a question that's come through around, has anybody with a disability applied for a scholarship, and can some of the funds be used for accessibility supports?
Yes. For example, Max Burt, a fellow this year, is from Will Easy, and some of his fellowship funds are, I guess, being used to cover any support worker costs. So yes, and we'll work through with applicants just to make sure they have all the support they need to make it a great fellowship experience. Yes, I strongly encourage you to apply. If anyone does have, need support with the application form or any, I guess, point throughout the selection process, please do come to us. We want it to be a good experience for you as well.
Great, thank you. So just a couple of operational questions. Is there a way to access the template of the application to allow applicants to plan ahead of submitting?
Yeah, so once you've logged onto the portal and I guess have saved for the first time your application, you will notice in the top right hand corner there is a PDF button. So you can download a PDF and it has, I guess, all the core application questions in there that you could work on offline. So yeah, that could be a way as well. There's just some additional very quick feedback questions at the end of the application that aren't in that PDF, but all the core questions are there, so you could have a look at them.
Great. And somebody just asked, how do they go back and access the application that they started?
So you should be able to log into the portal and it will have on the home screen like your unsubmitted application. You just click on that and it will sort of take you back to where you last saved the application. So we do encourage you to probably save regularly and on each page as you progress. And yeah, your application isn't submitted until you sort of review the terms and conditions on the end page and click submit. You'll then receive an email with a PDF of your full submitted application as well. So.
Great. Now we've had quite a few people ask the question about how many applications we receive every year for this fellowship.
Yeah. So it does change each year, but generally we receive over 250 applications for the fellowship each year.
And we award 10 each year.
We do, yeah. And so from those 200 plus, they are then shortlisted to the top 50 that go to the regional panels. So if you do make it to the regional panels, I guess that's a great endorsement of you and your work.
Great. And I think the last question for today, which perhaps both yourself and Lyndon can respond to, is if people are wanting to get hold of previous scholars, fellows, how do they best go about doing that? Yeah,
Lyndon, I'll let you go first as a fellow.
For sure. I would say LinkedIn is a really good resource. A lot of the fellows are on there, certainly through the Westpac channels. And in terms of finding out who the fellows are, the Westpac Scholars website's got the background of the individuals for that year, and it's got some great background on each of them, so you can see perhaps who resonates with you most, or I'm sure there'll be some crossover as well in your networks with those individuals. So that would be my advice. You're welcome to start with me if you like as well, so I can direct you if helpful.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Probably look at their scholars page on our website. It has their LinkedIn on most of their scholar profile pages, but also read on our news page that has a lot of scholar reflections, which really brings to life how they found the leadership program and as the other opportunities. Because just remember, the fellows, I guess, are very busy too, so they do often get inundated with requests. So if by chance you can't get hold of someone, please do contact us at Westpac Scholars, and we can have a chat to you and also try and connect you with a fellow that might be aligned to either your area or the learnings you hope to get through the fellowship. And yeah, for those that do get to the national panel, we match you with a previous fellow as a coach as well. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So as Alyssa mentioned earlier, we will be sending out a post event email probably on Friday once we've got an edited version of this webinar and all the answers to the hundreds of questions that have come through that we haven't been able to get to today on this call. So thanks so much to both of you for taking the time to answer the questions. And thank you to all of you for asking such great questions.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, and all the best for your application. We really look forward to reviewing them. Thanks.